how much does it cost to live in the Orlando, Florida area? Well, today I'll be diving into the cost of living in DeLand, Florida, which is a small suburb just on the north side of Orlando. I'll be looking at actual expenses for everyday folks, and we'll be in a grocery store to check out the pricing of a few staples here in a bit. We'll be showing you what actual expenses, including things like electric bills, homeowners and health insurance, and tax expenses. We'll be looking at housing costs. So let's jump right in with what a gallon of gas is going to cost you in what I believe is the best suburb in the Orlando area. Well, a gallon of gas is going to run you around $2.82 or, well, all the way up to $3.19. Just this morning, I was at a gas station and I paid $2.84. Right across the street, it was $3.17. So it can vary. It varies also on whether you're shopping at, Racetrack or Exxon or Wawa, or whether you're shopping at like a Walmart, Murphy type thing. It can really make a difference. Next, let's look at vehicle registration. Well, if you're moving from another state, vehicle registration is going to run you around $400 to move here. Then after that, it's going to run you, between $50 and $150 for a basic vehicle. Now, if you've got an RV, a boat, a simple trailer, things like that, then those costs are going to be higher or lower depending on your situation. Next, let's talk about property taxes, because taxes are a big deal to Floridians and something that people throughout the nation think that, they tend to be sensitive when they're calling us and inquiring about buying a home here in the Orlando area. Well, first off, let's kind of set the stage with homestead exemption. Well, homestead exemption is something that the Florida voters voted on years ago. I believe it's the Save Our Homes Act. And this homestead exemption, it helps to keep prices low. It doesn't necessarily lower the expense significantly, although there is an advantage. The real advantage is that homestead exemption keeps your tax level stable. I believe they can only max out at, I think, 3% each year over year. So where I live, for instance, I live out on the west side of town. I've got a 1,700 square foot home on 20 acres out in the sticks. I homesteaded that home back in 2001. And my property taxes each and every year, well, this year rather, were about $1,400. Now it's gone up, but very slightly year over year. If you have a 1,500 square foot home, let's say in Victoria Park, that was purchased in 2020, well, your taxes are going to be around $3,300. If you have now let's take a look at an example without homestead exemption. Well, a 4-bedroom, 3-bath home like one that I currently have on the market right now. It's a 4-3 pool home with 2,400 square feet. Those taxes are running over $8,000, $8,412. So the homestead exemption is really a big deal, and if you don't homestead your property, suppose it's a second home, suppose it's a rental, things like that, they can be significantly higher, and some areas are higher than others. If you're buying new construction, which new construction is something that we're helping a lot of our people with, your taxes are going to have to be determined based on an estimation. And Volusia County has a tax estimator on their website, and a 1,500 square foot home in DeLand is going to have an estimated tax bill of between $5,500 and $6,000 based on this tool. Of course, it can be higher or lower, but so it starts off as a lot of money, but 20 years down the road, that $5,000 or $6,000 is not going to be a lot of money. So regarding new construction, we don't actually know the tax bill for a new construction home, whereas we do with a resale, whether it's a piece of vacant land or a home that has a record. We know exactly what the tax bills have been, and we can assess with pretty good accuracy what the tax bill is going to be. However, with new construction home, it was a piece of dirt. Now they put a home on it, so the tax people don't really know either. However, the Volusia County website has a fantastic estimator tool that helps us to determine what that's going to be. So here in DeLand, a 1,500 square foot home is going to run you between $5,500 and $6,000 for an annual tax rate. Now, Volusia County is among the higher millage rates in the entire state. I heard a while back that we were actually the 6th highest in the state. I don't know why, because inland Volusia tends to be much less expensive than over on the beaches. A place like Ormond, Daytona, New Smyrna Beach, Port Orange, Ponce Inlet have some very expensive homes, and I can certainly see our taxes being impacted by them. So we will be coming to housing prices a bit later, but let's go ahead and let's take a look at Florida's income tax. Well, what's important to know here is Florida has no income tax. It's a big advantage of living here in the state of Florida, especially if you're a high income earner. It's really a big deal. Now, we do have a 6.5% sales tax here in Volusia County, also in Orange County, which is where Orlando is. And there's I believe it's 7% down in Seminole County. Sanford, Lake Mary, Castleberry, Altamont, Longwood, and all that. They have a 7% down there. Next, let's talk about homeowners insurance. So homeowners insurance is almost always less expensive with new construction. That's a very important detail to know. As buyers are calling us coming from out of state, we're often recommending new construction homes for a couple reasons. First off, interest rates tend to be lower because new construction builders are often offering lower interest rates along with incentives, but the homeowner's insurance is quite a bit less. Now, my home where I live, I've got a 4-3 home on 20 acres. I've got a wood stove. I've got no hydrant within I believe 6 miles, and I've got flood insurance. And my total insurance, including the flood insurance, is about $3,800 for the entire year. I find that to be pretty reasonable, and it's pretty typical of some other homes I've seen. A new construction home, that 1,500 square foot home in DeLand that I spoke of earlier, that homeowner's insurance is going to run around $1,066 per year. Now, let's talk about insurance and hurricane insurance, because everyone knows that we have hurricanes here in Florida. It's true. However, what's important to note is these hurricanes don't necessarily have a big impact on our homeowners insurance. When a hurricane does come, which they do, if it happens to have an impact us, which frankly is the rarity, but we have to prepare for it because they do happen. But when they come, we have a hurricane deductible. Now, that hurricane deductible, usually 2, but it could be 5 or 10%, and it is separate from your regular homeowner's deductible. So if you have a $400,000 home, you could be stuck with an $8,000 deductible to protect yourself from the expenses from that hurricane. So next, let's talk about auto insurance, because auto insurance is something that I hear people from out of state, when they call to ask about buying a home here in the Orlando area, they're often thinking that our rates are crazy high, and I just don't know if that's the case. I'd really like to know what your rates are on a 6-month basis in various states. So if you put that in the comments below, I'd really appreciate that. So auto insurance for myself and my wife for 6 months runs us around $1,323, as does someone else on my team, another couple. There's 2 of them in their 30s. Their bill's also $1,300 for 6 months. Now, we have one member on our team, single guy, his rate's around $1,313 for one car. You might think, well, he's just a lousy driver, but in reality, he was a former insurance adjuster, and so he has all sorts of insurance features. He also has a newer car, so he's going to pay a higher rate for that. Next, let's talk about electric bills here in DeLand. Well, a new construction home in June for one member on my team was $199.13 for their electric bill. In April, when there's less air conditioning running, it was only $97. Someone else had an average summer bill of $150 over the last year, and an average winter bill of around $115. My bill in June was about $250, but that's June, folks, and in June we've had a lot of 90-degree plus days. So if you've got a manufactured home, maybe you have a very inefficient home, or maybe a great big home, well, look, you can easily spend $400 or $500 for electric. It really depends on you and your situation. Solar panels can have a huge impact in a positive way towards lessening your electric bill. I don't necessarily believe that solar panels are always good. They can be a very negative asset as a whole. However, for your electric bill's perspective, they can be really good. My son-in-law and daughter-in-law, for instance, they are practically penguins, icicles hanging from the ceilings. However, their electric bill is like $40 a month, and that is fantastic for them. Next, let's talk about water bills. So here in DeLand, much of DeLand is on septic and wells, so there's no water bills whatsoever. If you live in an HOA, oftentimes irrigation is covered, But if you live in DeLand, your sewer and water bill is going to run you around 80, 90 bucks a month as a whole. So it's not really a big deal. Public water for the first 4,000 gallons is going to run you $3.93. Then it's going to run you $8.94 for every 1,000 gallons afterwards. Internet in DeLand is going to run you around 80 bucks a month, unless you're a cheapskate like me. You get it for 55 bucks a month. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is tolls, because when I was doing my research and I started looking around at some of my bills, I discovered that I'm spending over $100 a month in tolls. And frankly, I didn't even know. I'm kind of embarrassed about it, but I use the toll roads all the time. Between here and Orlando, I can get down there. I can take I-4 and not have the tolls, but the traffic getting there is often a problem once I cross the St. Johns River. So I'm often using the express lanes. I'm using the 417, the 429, the Wekiva Parkway, which are the beltway around Orlando. And so I'm using them quite a bit. Now, I'm a heavy user because of my location, but if you want to be somewhere that you don't have to rely on tolls, simply give us a call, because there are some areas in DeLand, or down in Orlando for that matter, that you're just not going to need them as much. When you call and we're chatting it up on a Zoom call or whatever, I'm going to be digging to find out, what type of home, what type of situation, what type of location you're looking for. Because look, with all the technology and all the modern things we have these days, it still boils down to three things in real estate: location, location, and location. Next, let's talk about walkability, because outside of the downtown area, DeLand is not necessarily that walkable. They have much better public transportation down in the Orlando area. However, here in DeLand, we do have the Votran, which is our bus system, and the Sunrail, which is our newer rail system that runs from DeLand all the way down through Orlando, all the way down to, I believe, down to Point Siena. And it's a fantastic opportunity. You can run from DeLand to Orlando and back every day for $9.50. However, if you buy a weekly, monthly, or annual pass, you can get unlimited riding and significantly cut those costs. So if you're considering the cost of the registration, the auto insurance, the gasoline, and the maintenance, you put those things together and then not having to drive it, it really can be a big advantage for DeLand residents. Now, before we get to the cost of living for food and housing, let's go ahead and talk about medical expenses. Well, just the other day I had to go into the doctor because I believe I tore my meniscus, and it was $65 copay. Then I had a $280 fee for my MRI, and my monthly insurance is around $450 a month for my wife and I. Now, we are 50-something, so we're old folks, but that's what it's running us. Now, maybe that depends on your employer or what type of insurance you have, but it seems to be pretty good here in this area. Look, I've been sitting here way too long, so I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to grab Charlie. We're going to head over to Publix for a few minutes, check out the cost of living, basically the cost of some staples, and then we're going to come back and address housing here in DeLand, Florida. All right. Okay, so as we're heading over to the Publix here, it's important to note that there are several grocery stores here in DeLand. We've got two Publixes, two Aldis plus another Aldi in Deltona, which is right close to DeLand. There's one Winn-Dixie. I'm just kind of rambling off here, trying to think of what other grocery stores are here. So there's a good bit of options. Plus there's also a couple Walmarts with quick access. There's a Walmart right in DeLand. Up on the north side, there's a Walmart neighborhood center just south of downtown. Then there's another one in Orange City just south of DeLand. So a lot of options, and prices between Walmart, Winn-Dixie, and Publix can vary quite a bit. Frankly, everybody seems to like Publix. My wife likes to go to Publix. I like to go to Publix. But Walmart is cheaper. But we're going to Publix because that's kind of the local grocery store chain here in our area. So let's check it out. Here we are in Publix. Let's go check out some produce. Okay, so let's check out a couple of things here that are big here. Apples. These apples are $1.69 a pound for Fuji's. So I don't know what that looks like compared to other places. Next, let's talk about oranges. Okay, oranges. Florida oranges, because everybody knows that Florida is big on oranges. Well, the reality, folks, most all our oranges are coming from elsewhere. California is a big part of them. This will run you $1.99 a pound. Frankly, this feels kind of light. Produce here is usually pretty good, but this feels kind of light. Let's move on and check out our next item. Okay, so now let's check out some vegetables. We got broccoli. Broccoli is going to run us $2.99 for 3 heads. Potatoes, 5 pounds of russet potatoes are going to be $3.99. Now Publix says that they are $2 off. I don't know that I necessarily believe that they're actually $2 off. Publix, as I said before, is not a cheap grocery store, but they do have a lot here. They do have a lot to offer. Next, let's check out beefsteak tomatoes, $2.99. They even smell good. Get away from me. Avocados, Hass avocados, 3 for $4. Hard as a rock. Nothing a paper bag won't take care of for some guac. Vine ripe tomatoes, $2.49. Yummalicious. So let's take over and look at some seafood and some meat. Okay, I know we're heading over to the seafood and meat section, but let's check out the chips. Buy one, get one free. $4.99 is allegedly what you're saving. I don't know if I mentioned it before, but Publix is not a cheap grocery store. Publix is very expensive, especially when you compare it to, say, Walmart. What Publix does have is a good experience here. Pop, buy 2, get 2 free. That boils down to $10.75 a pop. That seems crazy high for a 12-pack of Pepsi products. So let's head over to the meat now. Okay, so next we're going to look at ground beef. Ground sirloin, $11.66. That's 1.27 pounds, $9.18 a pound here at Publix. Let's find us a good steak. Here's a nice fat T-bone. Ooh, $24 for a steak. Inflation has gotten us. It's only $1.50 a pound. Maybe that's cheap, I don't know, but it looks good, but $24 for a steak. Whew. Okay, next let's look at some chicken. How about some drums? Here we go. Drums, $5.60 or $2.29 a pound for drumsticks. And then, how about a whole chicken? Where's a whole chicken? Here's a whole chicken. Whole roasting chicken. It's going to run you $2.19 a pound, or $13.90, something like that. So let's head over and check the seafood now. Okay, so let's check out Publix's seafood section. $4.99 a pound for live mussels. Look like small ones. They do have $21.25, which is kind of a medium-sized shrimp for $10.99. And then scallops, $25.99. And let's see, they have crab cakes on special for $3.99. And next, let's look at some locally grown fresh salmon. Now, those of you that know, we don't grow salmon here. We don't have salmon anywhere near this place. They didn't call it locally grown. That's just me being silly. Let's go check out some other dry goods. Okay, so next, let's check out the cost of some classic roast Folgers. Full canister. That is $18.23. Curious to know what it's going to cost in your neck of the woods. Let us know in the comment section below. And then Dunkin' Donuts Original Blend, $7.99 for a 12-ounce package. So checking out where you live, let me know. Maybe Florida isn't so cheap after all, or maybe it's more expensive. Cereal is over here on your right, Charlie. I don't know, what kind of cereal do you want? We've got 1,000 different things.
Cocoa Puffs.
Cocoa Puffs. Crazy for Cocoa Puffs. $5.29 for a box for a 10-ounce box, 10.4 ounce box of cereal. That's what it's going to run you. So let us know your thoughts. Okay, so next let's talk about a gallon of milk. Couple options. We can get the TG Lee for $6.29 a gallon, or Publix brand for $4.99 a gallon. So the Publix brand, same milk if you ask me. Good stuff. Dozen eggs, $3.49, Publix brand. And then let's slide over, Charlie, and look at the bread. see what kind of bread. Let's look at I'm going to look at the Publix brand here. $2.85 for a loaf of bread. That doesn't feel very fresh. Oh, making a mess. Ah. Or you can get Nature's Own over here for $4.11. So that kind of gives you an idea of what the produce, what the bread, what the seafood, what the meats are going to cost you here in Publix. Let's go ahead and head back to the office and address the cost of living here in DeLand from a housing perspective. So now that we're back from our little grocery shopping adventure, let's go ahead and address housing as a part of the cost of living here in DeLand, Florida. Well, the median sale price of a 322 home with 1,500 square foot here in DeLand is right around $322 grand. Now, if you want a swimming pool, add 55 grand onto that because that's about what that's going to run you. In Orlando, that same home is going to run you $375 grand or $53,000 more than that home up in DeLand. And then, of course, add a swimming pool onto that if you like. So housing, we are right around the national average, slightly below the national average, but that gives you some actual numbers. Next, let's compare Orlando to some of the suburbs, other suburbs here in the DeLand area. Well, Orlando's median sale price as a whole is $392,000, whereas it's only $332,000 here up in DeLand. So you're talking a $60,000 median sale price less in DeLand. So DeLand is clearly less expensive on a median sale price than it is up in Orlando now, or down in Orlando. Now, it's important to note that Orlando has a wider variety of housing. There's very, very affordable housing. There are some areas that maybe not as nice, maybe more urban areas that are just not as desirable. Whereas up here, like in DeBerry, where the median sale price is $400,000, their homes are really quite similar. They have nicer areas like DeBerry Plantation or Riviera Bella, Rivington, but then they don't have the very low income areas that you'll find in Orlando. Deltonia's median sale price, $315,000. And Sanford, which is a little closer to Orlando, just on the other side of the St. Johns River Bridge, they're on the south shore of Lake Monroe, the median price is $370,000. Now, down in Sanford, you're going to get a little bit more traffic, and but you are a little closer to Orlando, so if you were going to take a Sunrail or something like that, your cost may be impacted just a little bit. Now, you can buy a manufactured home, maybe on a few acres, maybe up to 5 acres in the Lake County section of DeLand for under $200,000. So if you want a little space, DeLand is definitely a place to get that. If you want country, we've got a good bit more of that than Orlando has. New construction, we have a lot more options up here. And when you're talking about cost of living, the money you can save on new construction because of builder incentives and lower interest rates by using builders lenders can really add up. So rentals here in the DeLand area, you can get a 3-2 single family residential home for around $1,800 a month. Now, of course, they can go all the way up from there, and you can get them for less. You can probably get one for $1,100-$1,200, maybe a 2-1 home, maybe a smaller home, but you're going to spend $1,500 to $25 for a 3-2 home. Of course, we've got plenty of apartments here in the area as well. Prices vary wildly there. You can get an apartment here for $1,000, $1,200. You can also spend $3,000-$4,000 for that same one. So if you want to know more about the cost of living here in Orlando, or more specifically here in the DeLand area, simply let us know. We've got a small team here, so we've got a combined wealth of knowledge throughout the Orlando area. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.